What would you do if your own family called your 7-year-old son useless, then physically attacked him for the crime of laughing too loudly? I thought I knew my family. Thought blood meant something. But when my sister broke my son's tooth and my parents called him a worthless leech, I realized something that changed everything. Sometimes the people who should protect your child are the ones you need to protect your child from. What I did next wasn't just revenge. It was surgical. It was silent. And by the time they realized what was happening, it was already too late. But let me start from the beginning because you need to understand who these people really were before I show you what they became. My son Evan was pure magic at 7 years old. While other kids threw tantrums, Evan threw back his head and laughed. Clouds shaped like dragons. At ants marching like tiny soldiers. At our dog chasing her own tail until she got dizzy. Laughter was his superpower, and it used to be mine too. His giggles could turn the worst day into something beautiful. When he found a funny-shaped rock, he'd name it and create entire stories about its adventures. When I burned dinner, he'd laugh and suggest we order pizza and have a fancy restaurant night on our living room floor. But I hadn't spoken to my family in 2 years, not since they, accidentally, spent my entire college fund on my sister Lexi's cosmetic surgery. $20,000 I'd saved since I was 16, working double shifts at a diner while going to community college. $20,000 that was supposed to be my ticket to a better life. Instead, it paid for Lexi's liposuction and veneers because she deserved to feel confident. They called it a misunderstanding. Called it theft. When I confronted them, my father said I was being dramatic. My mother said family helps family. Lexi said I should be grateful she looked good enough to represent our family name. I cut them off completely. Changed my phone number. Moved across town. Built a life with just me and Evan, and honestly, we were happier than we'd ever been. Our little apartment was filled with laughter, art projects covering every surface, and the kind of unconditional love I'd never experienced growing up. Then my sister called. Mom's health was failing. Could I bring Evan for one weekend visit? Just one weekend to let them meet their grandson properly. I should have hung up. I should have trusted the voice in my head screaming, "Don't go." But guilt is a powerful drug, and I was still addicted. Maybe they'd changed. Maybe becoming grandparents had softened them. Maybe, just maybe, they could love Evan the way I never felt loved. The moment we arrived, I knew I'd made a mistake. Lexi opened the door, looked at Evan's mismatched socks and messy curls, and said with a smirk, "Wow, raising a little clown, huh?" Evan's smile faltered for just a second, but he bounced back with a resilience only children possess. "I like clowns," he said brightly. "They make people happy." Lexi rolled her eyes. "Of course you do." The house felt like a museum. Everything white and pristine and cold. Evan instinctively walked on his tiptoes, sensing this wasn't a place for children. My mother appeared, immaculate as always, and gave Evan a stiff pat on the head like he was a neighbor's dog. "He's energetic," she said, the word dripping with disapproval. My father didn't even get up from his recliner, just grunted an acknowledgement. At dinner, the tension was suffocating. Evan tried his best to be good, sitting up straight, using his napkin, speaking only when spoken to. But he was 7, and 7-year-olds find joy in unexpected places. When my mother brought out the gravy boat, an ornate silver thing that had been in our family for generations, Evan's eyes lit up. "It looks like a spaceship," he whispered to me, barely containing his excitement. "Like it could fly to the moon." I smiled at his imagination, but my father's fork clattered against his plate. "Kid can't sit still," he muttered, not looking up. Just like his mother. "All noise, no value." The words hit like a slap. Evan's face crumpled with confusion. He didn't understand what he'd done wrong. The laughter died in his throat, replaced by careful silence. That night, I tucked Evan into the guest room bed. My old childhood bed that felt smaller and sadder than I remembered. "Mommy," he whispered, "are they mad at me?" I smoothed his hair and lied with a smile. "No, sweetheart. They're just tired. Get some sleep." But sleep didn't come easily for either of us. But that night, watching him sleep with gauze packed between his gums, something inside me didn't break, crystallized. I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to take the one thing my family valued more than love, more than blood, more than anything else in this world: control. Their carefully constructed image. Their precious reputation. And they would never see it coming because they'd underestimated me my entire life. 2 weeks later, Evan stopped laughing. Completely. The boy who used to giggle at his own shadow now stared at the world with hollow, careful eyes. He flinched when adults raised their voices. He apologized for things that weren't his fault. My family hadn't just broken his tooth. They'd broken his spirit, convinced him that his joy was somehow wrong. That's when I knew this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about resurrection. I went back to their house alone, walked into that same kitchen where they'd attacked my child and said quietly, "You all crossed a line. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to say goodbye." They laughed. They assumed I was throwing another tantrum, cutting them off again like I had before. But this time was different. I placed 3 notarized documents on their table. Power of attorney revoked. Medical proxy revoked. Emergency contacts removed. Bank signature authority gone. "You can't speak for me," I said calmly. "You'll never speak for Evan. Ever again." Then I dropped the restraining order. 500 feet. Legally enforced. But that wasn't the real blow. I placed one final envelope on the table, addressed to their church. "That's a full report with photos of Evan's injuries, your text messages calling him worthless, and audio recordings of everything you said that weekend." The color drained from their faces like water from a broken dam. "I also contacted your country club board," I continued, my voice steady as steel. "You know, the one that just gave you that legacy award for exemplary community parenting. They'll receive the same report by courier this afternoon." Lexi started to speak, but I wasn't finished. "Your bridge club, your book club, your charity boards. Everyone gets to see who you really are." "You spiteful little," Lexi hissed, but I cut her off. "You didn't just humiliate my child. You convinced him his joy was a flaw. You broke his tooth, but worse, you tried to break his spirit. So I'm returning the favor. Your fake image, your perfect family act, your hollow pride. I'm dismantling all of it. But even that wasn't my real revenge. The fallout was swift and brutal. Their church issued a formal statement condemning their behavior and stripped their honorary memberships. Dad lost his prestigious mentoring position when the community board decided they couldn't have someone who called children useless, teaching leadership to teenagers. Lexi lost her job 3 weeks later when word of a possible lawsuit reached her firm. Turns out corporations don't want to be associated with adults who assault children. But my real revenge. It was surgical. It was poetic. And it was permanent. Years ago, they'd asked me to digitize their legacy vault. Decades of family photos, videos, awards, and documents they planned to donate to the local historical museum. It was their pride and joy, their proof that they were pillars of the community, a model American family worth remembering. I did digitize everything just as promised. But I edited out every single reference to them. Every photo was cropped to remove their faces. Every video was recut to exclude their voices. Every story was rewritten to focus on the joy, the laughter, the moments of genuine happiness, which tellingly rarely included them. What remained was a beautiful collection I titled, "The Boy Who Laughed," an exhibit celebrating childhood joy, resilience, and the power of unconditional love. I donated the entire collection to that same museum under my name as curator, exactly as they'd planned to do. When they found out, I sent them a simple postcard. No message. Just a screenshot of the museum's website featuring the exhibit title, "The Boy Who Laughed," a celebration of joy in the face of adversity. They wanted to be remembered as the perfect family, the community leaders, the people worth honoring. Instead, they vanished into silence while the only name that lived on belonged to the boy they called useless. The boy they said didn't belong. But he did belong. He belonged in a world that celebrated his laughter instead of silencing it. He belonged with people who saw his joy as a gift instead of a burden. And slowly, carefully, he began to heal. I enrolled him in a gentle art class where the instructor celebrated creativity and silliness. By the 3rd week he smiled. By the 4th week, he laughed at his own clay dinosaur. By the 5th week he was telling jokes so loudly the whole class laughed with him. That night, as Evan fell asleep on my chest, laughing again, finally laughing again, he mumbled into my sweater, "Thanks for picking me, even when they didn't." I whispered back, "I always picked you, baby. They just didn't matter enough to say no to." I didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves the moment they chose cruelty over kindness, control over love. All I did was write a better ending. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making someone pay for their cruelty. It's making sure they're forgotten while the people they tried to break shine brighter than ever. Today, Evan's laughter still fills every room he enters. And that's the only legacy that matters. If this story moved you, please subscribe and share where you're watching from in the comments below.